The vastness of space had never felt so oppressive. As I stared out the viewport of the USS Hawking, our state-of-the-art research vessel, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. We were farther from Earth than any human had ever ventured, on a mission to investigate an anomaly at the edge of our solar system. A mission that, in retrospect, we should never have undertaken. My name is Dr. Emily Chen, lead astrophysicist for this NASA deep space expedition. Our crew of 6 had trained for years for this moment, but nothing could have prepared us for what we were about to encounter. Dr. Chen, you might want to see this. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, breaking my reverie. I made my way to the bridge, my footsteps echoing in the sterile corridors of our home for the past 8 months. As I entered, the tension was palpable. Rodriguez, our pilot, Sarah, and our systems analyst Marcus were huddled around the main console, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the screens. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep the unease out of my voice. Marcus turned to me, his eyes wide. "The anomaly. It's not just a spatial distortion, there's something inside it." I leaned in, my heart racing as I processed the data scrolling across the screen. The readings were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Energy patterns that defied our understanding of physics, radiation levels that fluctuated wildly, and at the center of it all. "Is that—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "It appears to be a ship, alien in origin, and absolutely massive." The image on the screen slowly came into focus. Floating in the void, partially obscured by the swirling energies of the anomaly, was a structure that dwarfed our vessel. Its design was organic, almost chitinous, with no clear differentiation between hull and machinery. It was utterly alien, and yet I could have sworn it looked almost alive. "How did we not detect this earlier?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The anomaly must have been masking it somehow," I replied, my scientific curiosity momentarily overriding my growing sense of dread. "But now that we're closer, we can see it clearly." "What's it doing?" Marcus asked. I studied the trajectory calculations, and a chill ran down my spine. It's moving. Slowly, but deliberately. And if these calculations are correct, it's heading towards Earth. The silence that followed was deafening. We all knew what this meant: first contact, the discovery that would change humanity forever. But as I looked at that alien monstrosity, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were looking at something we were never meant to see. "We need to investigate," Rodriguez said finally, breaking the silence. "NASA needs to know about this immediately." I nodded, trying to ignore the voice in the back of my mind, screaming at me to turn the ship around and flee. "Agreed. Let's suit up and prepare for EVA. Whatever that thing is, we need to get a closer look." As we dispersed to prepare for our expedition, I cast one last glance at the alien ship on the screen. For a moment, I could have sworn I saw something move within its carapace-like exterior. A trick of the light, I told myself, but deep down, I knew. Our mission had just become something far more terrifying than we could have ever imagined. The airlock hissed open, and I found myself floating in the void, tethered to the USS Hawking by nothing more than a thin lifeline. Despite years of training, the sheer emptiness of space never failed to take my breath away. But today, that emptiness was broken by the looming presence of the alien vessel. "Comms check," Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled in my ear. "Everyone reading me?" A chorus of affirmatives followed. Our team of 4, Rodriguez, Sarah, our xenobiologist, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, and myself, slowly made our way towards the massive structure. Marcus and our medical officer, Dr. Hassan, remained aboard the Hawking to monitor our progress and vital signs. As we approached, the true scale of the alien ship became apparent. It was easily 100 times the size of our vessel, its surface a maze of ridges, protrusions, and what looked disturbingly like veins pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "My God," Yuki breathed. It's organic, at least partially. I'm picking up readings that suggest some kind of biological component to its structure." "Careful, everyone," Rodriguez warned. "We don't know what kind of defenses this thing might have. Stay alert." We spread out, each taking a different section of the ship to examine. I focused on what appeared to be an entrance, a massive, sphincter-like opening that pulsed slowly, as if breathing. "I think I found a way in," I reported, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "It looks like some kind of airlock, but different." "Roger that, Dr. Chen," Rodriguez replied. "Hold position. We'll regroup and enter together." As I waited, I ran my gloved hand over the surface near the opening. It was warm to the touch, almost feverish, and seemed to quiver slightly under my fingers. Suddenly, I felt a vibration, more mental than physical, pulse through my body. Did anyone else feel that?" I asked, my heart racing. "Feel what?" Sarah's voice came back, tinged with concern. Before I could respond, the airlock in front of me suddenly dilated, a rush of stale, alien air escaping into space. And then, impossibly, I heard a voice, not through the comms, but directly in my mind. "Welcome, explorers," it said, its tone a discordant mixture of warmth and menace. "We've been waiting for you." I recoiled, nearly losing my grip on the ship's surface. "Guys, tell me you heard that." "Heard what, Emily?" Rodriguez asked, alarm clear in his voice. "What's happening?" But I couldn't respond. The voice in my head continued, drowning out my teammates' concerned shouts. "You seek knowledge, we can provide it. Enter and learn the secrets of the cosmos." The pull was irresistible. Before I could stop myself, I found my body moving towards the opening, drawn by an unseen force. "Emily, what are you doing?" Sarah's panicked voice barely registered. I have to go in," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant and unfamiliar. "It's calling me." "Negative. Do not enter that ship," Rodriguez commanded, but it was too late. As my teammates watched in horror, I stepped into the pulsating opening. The last thing I heard before the alien flesh closed behind me was Yuki's terrified scream. Inside, everything was darkness and pulsing, organic walls. I felt my suit disconnect, the alien atmosphere enveloping me. I should have been terrified, should have been suffocating, but instead, I felt at peace. "You have taken the first step," the voice in my head said. "Now, let us show you what lies beyond the veil of your limited perception." And then, my mind exploded with visions. I saw the birth and death of stars, the collision of galaxies, the very fabric of space-time twisting and writhing like a living thing, and through it all, I sensed a presence, vast, ancient, and utterly alien. "We are the navigators," the voice explained. "We traverse the spaces between realities. And now, you will join us." I wanted to scream, to run, to wake up from this nightmare. But I couldn't. I was trapped, not just physically, but mentally. As the alien consciousness began to seep into my mind, I realized with growing horror that this wasn't first contact. It was an invasion. I don't know how long I floated in that organic chamber, my mind overwhelmed by visions of cosmic horror and alien knowledge. Time seemed to lose all meaning as the entity, the navigator, poured its consciousness into me. Slowly, agonizingly, I began to reassert control over my own thoughts. The alien presence receded slightly, allowing me to take stock of my surroundings. I was suspended in a viscous fluid, my spacesuit gone, replaced by a second skin of translucent, pulsating membrane. The walls around me throbbed with an unsettling rhythm, like a massive, diseased heart. "Your resistance is unexpected," the navigator's voice echoed in my head. "Most species we encounter are eager to embrace the knowledge we offer." What are you?" I managed to think, still struggling to form coherent thoughts. "We are the shepherds of consciousness," it replied. "We guide species across the cosmic threshold, preparing them for ascension." Images flashed through my mind, civilizations rising and falling, entire planets being consumed by living ships like the one I was in. I saw humanity's future, our world reshaped into a nightmarish landscape of biomechanical horror. "No," I thought, fighting against the alien influence. "We don't want this. You can't do this to us." A sensation that might have been amusement rippled through the navigator's thoughts. "Your wants are irrelevant. The process has already begun." With a jolt of terror, I realized what it meant. The rest of my team, they were still out there, vulnerable. And through me, the navigator had learned everything about our mission, our ship, our world. "Your companions will join us soon," the navigator confirmed, "and then we will journey to your home. Earth, you call it, a suitable incubator for our kind." I had to warn them somehow. Fighting against the paralysis that held me, I managed to twitch my fingers. The movement sent ripples through the fluid surrounding me, and suddenly I felt a connection, not to the navigator, but to the ship itself. It was alive, I realized, not just organic, but sentient in its own right, and it was in pain. "Help me," I pleaded silently, directing my thoughts towards the ship's consciousness. "We don't have to be part of this." For a moment, nothing happened. Then I felt a shift. The fluid around me began to drain, and the membrane encasing me retreated. I fell to the floor of the chamber, gasping and retching. "Impossible!" the navigator's voice boomed, its calm facade cracking. "The vessel cannot disobey." But it had. As I staggered to my feet, a passage opened in the wall of the chamber. Beyond, I could see more organic corridors, pulsing with the same sickly light. "Your allies approach," the navigator warned. "They will be assimilated, as you should have been. You cannot save them." I ignored the voice, focusing instead on the faint, desperate cry I could feel emanating from the ship itself. It wanted freedom as much as I did. "Hold on," I thought to it. "We'll find a way out of this." As I stumbled into the corridor, I heard the distant shouts of my teammates. They had entered the ship, searching for me. I had to reach them before the navigator did. A constant barrage of threats and promises. "You cannot escape us," it hissed. "Your mind belongs to us now. Accept your fate and the transcendence it brings." I gritted my teeth, pushing the voice to the back of my mind. "Get out of my head," I growled, though I knew it was futile. The connection had been made, and I could feel the alien consciousness probing at the edges of my thoughts, seeking a way back in. As I rounded a corner, I nearly collided with a figure in a spacesuit. For a moment, hope surged through me. My team had found me. But as the figure turned, I recoiled in horror. It was Sarah, our pilot, but her face behind the helmet visor was wrong. Her eyes were black voids, and her mouth was stretched in an impossibly wide grin. "Emily," she said, her voice a distorted parody of its former self, "we've been looking for you. It's time to join us. The navigators have so much to show us." I backed away, my heart pounding. "Sarah, fight it! This isn't you!" But her only response was a low, guttural laugh that echoed through the organic hallways. I turned and ran, the sound of her lumbering pursuit close behind. As I fled, I caught glimpses of the others. Rodriguez, his face contorted in a rictus of pain as tendrils of alien flesh burrowed into his suit. Yuki, floating limp in a chamber similar to the one I had escaped from, her body already beginning to mutate. "You see?" The navigator's voice returned, smug and triumphant. "Resistance is futile. Your species is weak, easily molded. Soon, you will all be part of us." I wanted to scream, to curl up and give in to despair, but the faint consciousness of the ship itself kept me going. I could feel its pain, its desperate desire for freedom. It had helped me escape. And I knew it was my only hope of saving what was left of my team and warning Earth. Rounding another corner, I found myself in what appeared to be a central chamber. Massive tendrils of neural tissue converged here, pulsing with energy, and in the center. "Marcus," I breathed. Our systems analyst was suspended in a web of organic cables, his eyes open but unseeing. His fingers twitched sporadically, interfacing with the ship's systems. "Ah, yes," the navigator said, its voice taking on a note of pride. This one's mind was particularly well suited to our needs. Through him, we now control your vessel. The Hawking, you call it, and fitting name, for one who will help us navigate the cosmos. I approached Marcus cautiously, my mind racing. If he was connected to both this ship and the Hawking, maybe there was a way. "Marcus," I said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. "I know you're in there. Fight it. Remember who you are." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus's eyes flickered, a spark of recognition lighting up. "Emily," he croaked, his voice barely audible. "What's happening?" "Stay with me, Marcus," I urged. "We need to warn Earth. Can you access the Hawking's communications?" His brow furrowed in concentration. I think so, but they're in my head, Emily. They're trying to take control." "Focus on my voice," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my tone. "You can do this. We have to warn them." Marcus's fingers began to move more purposefully, interfacing with the alien technology surrounding him. I could feel the navigator's growing alarm. "Stop this at once," it commanded. "You cannot be allowed to interfere." The ship around us shuddered, and I heard the sound of pounding footsteps approaching. The rest of my transformed crew, no doubt coming to stop us. "Hurry, Marcus," I pleaded. "We're running out of time." His eyes snapped open, blazing with a mixture of pain and determination. "Message sent," he gasped. "But Emily, you have to destroy us. It's the only way." Before I could respond, the chamber was filled with the monstrous forms of our former teammates. Sarah's distorted laugh echoed off the walls as they closed in. "I'm sorry," I whispered to Marcus. Then, drawing on every ounce of willpower I had left, I reached out with my mind to the ship's consciousness. "Now!" I screamed, both mentally and out loud. "Break free!" The world around me exploded into chaos. The ship's response to my desperate plea was immediate and violent. The organic walls convulsed, tendrils thrashing wildly. My transformed crewmates were thrown off their feet, their inhuman shrieks mixing with the psychic howl of the navigator. "What have you done?" The alien voice raged in my mind. Its usual calm shattered. I didn't answer, focusing all my energy on maintaining my connection with the ship's consciousness. I could feel its pain, its fury, and its newfound determination. Together, we pushed against the navigator's control. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. The floor beneath my feet heaved, and I stumbled, nearly losing my grip on Marcus. His eyes were wide with pain and fear, but he managed a weak nod. "Go," he whispered. "Save yourself. Save Earth. I'm not leaving you," I shouted over the cacophony of rending metal and tearing flesh. But even as I spoke, I knew it was hopeless. The tendrils connecting Marcus to the ship's systems were too deeply embedded. Trying to remove him would kill him instantly. A massive tremor shook the chamber, and I saw cracks forming in the walls. Through them, I caught glimpses of the void beyond. The ship was tearing itself apart. "You fool!" the navigator's voice boomed, tinged with something I hadn't heard before, fear. "You'll destroy us all." "Better that than letting you reach Earth," I snarled back. I took one last look at Marcus, silently promising to remember his sacrifice. Then I turned and ran, letting the ship's consciousness guide me through the disintegrating corridors. Behind me, I heard the agonized screams of my former crewmates as they were exposed to the vacuum of space. I forced myself not to look back, not to think about the fact that just hours ago these had been my friends, my colleagues. The ship's guidance led me to a small chamber near what I assumed was the outer hull. As I entered, I saw a row of pod-like structures, pulsing with the same sickly light as the rest of the vessel. "Escape pods," I realized aloud. I felt a wave of affirmation from the ship's consciousness. It wanted me to survive, to warn others of the threat. As I climbed into one of the pods, I felt the navigator make one last desperate attempt to regain control of my mind. "You cannot escape us," it hissed. "We are eternal. We are everywhere. Your species will join us or perish." I closed my eyes, summoning every ounce of mental strength I had left. "No," I said firmly. "We choose our own path. We choose freedom." With a final psychic push, I felt the navigator's presence recede. At the same moment, the escape pod sealed around me and launched into space. Through the small viewport, I watched as the massive alien vessel shuddered and began to break apart. Huge sections of its biomechanical hull tore away, spilling a mixture of organic matter and advanced technology into the void. As the distance between us grew, I felt the last tendrils of the ship's consciousness brush against my mind. There was gratitude there and a sense of peace. Then, with a final, cataclysmic explosion, the navigator's vessel disappeared in a burst of light and debris. I was alone in the silence of space, the only survivor of a nightmare beyond imagining. As the escape pod's systems engaged, plotting a course back towards the inner solar system, I allowed myself a moment of grief for my lost comrades, but I knew this wasn't over. Marcus had managed to send a warning, but would it be enough? The navigator had spoken of others like it. How many more were out there, waiting in the dark between stars? As Earth grew from a distant point of light to a blue marble before me, I steeled myself for what was to come. I had seen the face of a cosmic horror, had felt its mind trying to devour my own, and I knew that humanity's next great challenge wasn't conquering the stars, it was surviving them. The descent through Earth's atmosphere was a blur of fire and turbulence. My alien escape pod, never designed for this kind of re-entry, groaned and shuddered around me. For a moment, I was certain that after everything I'd been through, I was going to die here, so close to home. But somehow, the pod held together. As the flames dissipated, I caught my first glimpse of the Pacific Ocean stretching out below me. The pod's systems, operating on some unknowable alien logic, guided us towards a patch of water not far from the California coast. The impact was brutal. I was slammed against the restraints, my vision going dark for a moment. When I came to, water was seeping into the pod through hairline fractures in its structure. I had to get out, and fast. It took all of my remaining strength to crack open the pod's seal. As I swam free, I watched it sink into the depths, taking with it the last physical evidence of my encounter with the navigator. I floated on my back, staring up at the blue sky, so beautiful and yet now somehow threatening. I knew that somewhere up there, beyond that comforting blanket of atmosphere, horrors awaited that humanity was not yet ready to face. The sound of helicopters pulled me from my dark thoughts. I turned to see a Coast Guard chopper approaching, no doubt alerted by the fireball of my re-entry. As I waved my arms, I felt a mix of relief and dread. I was saved. Yes. But now came the hard part. How could I convince them of what I'd seen, of the danger that lurked in the dark between stars? The debriefings seemed to last for weeks. NASA, the military, government agencies I'd never even heard of, they all wanted to hear my story. Again and again, I recounted the events on the navigator's ship, watched their faces shift from skepticism to horror. And you're certain this entity is no longer a threat? A stern-faced general asked for what felt like the 100th time. The ship was destroyed, I replied, my voice hoarse from endless repetition. But it spoke of others, many others, and now they know we're here. The room fell silent. I could see the weight of this revelation settling over them. Humanity had long wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we knew the truth, and it was far worse than we could have imagined. The warning Marcus sent, I continued, did it reach you? A NASA official nodded gravely. It did. Fragmented, corrupted, but enough to mobilize us. We've already begun scanning for similar anomalies, strengthening our deep space monitoring capabilities. It won't be enough, I said, the words heavy on my tongue. What's out there? It's beyond our comprehension. We need to prepare, not just scientifically, but mentally, philosophically. The debriefing ended shortly after that. As I was led back to my quarters, a comfortable but closely monitored apartment within a secure facility, I caught a glimpse of a news broadcast, blurry footage of my pod's descent, wild speculation about its origins. The world knew something had happened, but the full truth was still being kept under wraps. That night, as I lay sleepless in bed, I found myself wondering if that was the right call. Didn't humanity deserve to know the danger it faced? Or would the truth shatter the very foundations of our society? I thought of Marcus, of Sarah, of all my crewmates. Their faces haunted my dreams, twisted into the monstrous forms I'd last seen them in. We had ventured into the cosmic unknown in search of knowledge, of glory. Instead, we had awakened something ancient and terrible. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I made a silent vow. I would make sure their sacrifice wasn't in vain. I would prepare humanity for the horrors that awaited us in the depths of space, because I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to my core, that the navigators were still out there, and someday they would return. In the darkness of my room, I could almost hear the navigator's voice, a whisper from across the cosmic void. "We are patient, we are eternal, and we will have you all." I woke with a start, drenched in cold sweat. Outside my window, the stars twinkled innocently, but now I knew the truth that lay behind their serene beauty. The universe was vast, wondrous, and hungry. Our battle for survival had only just begun.